From Immigrant to Millionaire, the American Dream Story. The storm hit Atlanta like a freight train. Thunder cracked the sky open, lightning slashed through the thick black clouds, and rain hammered the pavement, drumming a panic inside Jessica Powell's chest. She gripped the steering wheel with trembling hands, breathing shallow and fast. Her jeans clung to sweat and rain, each contraction stabbing sharper, closer, like a countdown she couldn't stop. The city lights blurred through the rain like scattered stars sinking into dark water. Jessica wasn't supposed to be here. Not like this. Not now. A fiercely independent photographer who'd built a life from scratch. She'd always been in control. But tonight, control slipped through her fingers like sand. She was alone. Her ex-husband. The man whose name had stopped echoing in her life years ago. His eyes, once warm and familiar, now carved icy tunnels through her chest. She blinked twice, disbelief scrambling the pain. The storm outside wasn't just nature's rage. It mirrored the tempest roaring inside her. Their past, a tattered map of hurt and broken promises, flared up with every agonizing breath. The child they never had, an unspoken wound, pulled sharp at the edges of their fractured silence. Michael's voice was low, clipped. No softness, no apology. Just his usual cold professionalism. "You're early," he said, but the edge in his words spoke louder truths. Jessica swallowed the lump rising in her throat. How had fate thrown them together now, at this raw, bleeding moment? She had shielded Mia from Michael, kept the story locked tight. And now, what if there were questions about Mia's father? About genes, about blood, about belonging. Fear clenched her heart, cold and suffocating. The nurses buzzed around them, their whispered exchanges painting pictures of doubt and scandal. "Is that Dr. Reed? The one from years ago? Did you see her face? Something's off." Jessica's mind repeated Michael's name like a curse. The old resentment squeezed her ribs. How could she trust again? How could she let him near Mia? But her body gave no answers, only urgent pain and a fragile hope she barely dared to touch. Then, just when the storm seemed to settle, a new threat emerged. A rival from their shared past, lurking in the shadows, ready to rip open secrets long buried. The web tightened fast. Secrets, lies, and a family torn between what's been lost and what could still be saved. As the thunder rolled on, Jessica and Michael stood at the edge of a sharp divide, forced to choose. Could they find a path through the storm for Mia's sake? Or would the ghosts of their past swallow them whole? The labors deepen. The air thickens. The night holds its breath. Hey, before we continue with this incredible story, I need to give you an important warning. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube canceled their subscriptions without warning. Just check out the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any exclusive content coming up. And while you're there, leave that powerful like. It helps me a lot with the algorithm. Oh, and let me know in the comments, what city are you watching from? I love meeting all the amazing people who are part of this community. Your participation makes a difference. Let's interact. The air in the hospital was thick, almost suffocating. Jessica's heart pounded against her ribs like a caged animal. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, flickering like her thoughts. She could barely process the reality of Michael standing just feet away. "Jessica, we should talk," he said, his voice steady but cold. The tension crackled between them, electric and sharp. She wanted to shout, to scream how unfair everything felt. But all that came out was a pained whisper. "I don't want to talk." What could he possibly say that would change anything? The last time they spoke was in anger, fueled by grief and betrayal. And now, after years of silence, he stood here just as the storm rolled through her world. Look, he started again. This is important. We need to. A piercing wail shattered the air, cutting Michael off mid-sentence. Jessica's heart dropped. Was that a baby? The frantic sounds grew louder until the source emerged, a nurse sprinting past, cradling a tiny bundle wrapped in a pale blue blanket. The urgency in her face ignited a spark of fear in Jessica. What was happening? Just then, the ground beneath her feet trembled. A loud crash echoed through the halls. The lights flickered violently, and for a brief moment, everything turned black. Jessica felt the panic rise like bile in her throat. When the power flickered back on, chaos erupted. A nurse shouted commands. People rushed around, but Jessica's gaze glued to the small bundle still cradled in the nurse's arms. Get Dr. Reed. We need him now. Jessica's mind raced. Was Mia safe? The fear gripped her chest tighter as she struggled to break free from the crowd rushing by. Her eyes darted to Michael, who was already moving toward the commotion, his face tensed and focused. Then it happened. A loud rumble shook the walls as a voice rang out over the emergency broadcast system. All staff, report to the pediatric unit immediately. We have a code blue. Her heart plummeted. Code blue? What did that mean? Her legs moved before she even realized, following the flow of people into the chaos. Michael turned slightly, his expression now a mask of determination mixed with worry. Stay here, he called out. But it was already too late. They reached a large waiting room where families were huddled together in panic. Enough sobs echoed in the corners to dim the blinding lights around her. As she stepped further in, her breath caught in her throat. There, near the entrance, standing in shadow, was a familiar face. It belonged to a woman Jessica never thought she'd see again. Lila, her old friend from college. But the look on Lila's face made Jessica's stomach twist. It was one of pure fear, and she was holding something. A small, familiar object. Jessica! Lila's voice trembled, her eyes wide with dread. You need to see this. As she stepped forward, revealing the object cradled in her hands, Jessica's breath turned to ice. It was a faded photograph. One she'd tucked away long ago. A picture of her, Michael, and another child. A child that was not Mia. Lila, how did you get that? Jessica's voice was barely above a whisper, the reality crashing over her like a wave. The pieces began to click into place, each one more terrifying than the last. But before she could comprehend what this truly meant, the lights flickered again. The alarms blared loudly, and the room erupted into chaos once more. Jessica gripped. But could she? Could they? Her eyes darted back to Michael, who was lost in a whirlwind of panic and responsibility, the weight of their past hanging heavy in the air. Jessica, come on! Michael shouted. But part of her felt anchored to the truth that threatened to unravel everything. Would the secrets of the past choke the future? Or would they breathe life into something unthinkable? As the storm raged on, inside and out, one thought gripped her. Nothing would ever be the same again. Jessica's grip on Lila's arm tightened, her mind racing as the photograph burned into her thoughts. The other child. How had this surfaced now? Jessica's pulse quickened, fear mingling with something deeper, something like betrayal. What do you mean, how did I get this? Lila's voice cut through her panic. You need to understand. This isn't just a picture. It's a piece of a life you buried, Jess. A life you thought you could erase. The surrounding chaos seemed to fade. Just the two of them, standing on a precipice of revelation. Across the room, Michael was lost in urgent conversations with nurses, his focus pulled in 1,000 directions. But Jessica felt tethered to Lila, to the past they shared. "This doesn't make sense," she hissed, glancing nervously back at Michael. "Doesn't it?" Lila pressed back, urgency sharpening her words. "Jessica, I found this in the attic. I thought it was just a memory. But now, it means something. You can't ignore it." Jessica's heart pounded louder than any alarm echoing around them. "Where's Mia?" she panicked, the thought crashing over her. Lila's expression darkened, and Jessica's pulse hitched higher. "She's fine, but you have to prepare yourself. This," Lila pointed to the picture, "this could change everything." Just then, another thunderous crack reverberated through the hospital, and the lights flickered ominously again. The emergency broadcast blared urgently, making everyone jump. "Attention, all staff to the pediatric unit. Repeat, all staff to the pediatric unit." A nurse rushed past them, barely acknowledging their presence. Jessica felt as if she were in a vacuum, her heart echoing painfully in her chest. "Lila, what do you mean by change everything?" she stammered, her words caught somewhere between fear and denial. But before Lila could respond, the air was split by the shrill wail of an infant, urgent, desperate, heads turned, eyes wide. And just like that, the crowd shifted as more nurses rushed past, panic rippling through them. Jessica's instincts kicked in. She needed to get to Mia. "What's happening?" she yelled. But Lila's grip held firm. "Jess, wait. You need to hear this." At that moment, the nurse holding the small bundle, the one who'd sprinted earlier, stumbled, the weight of her burden almost throwing her off balance. "Get back! Get back!" she yelled as she lost her hold. The bundle slipped from her arms, a flash of blue fabric tumbling out into the fray. Time slowed. Jessica's eyes widened. The blanket fell away. It wasn't just any baby. No, it wasn't Mia. It was another child, but not just any child. The resemblance was striking. It was a little girl, just a few months older than Mia, a spitting image of Jessica, yet familiar in a way that knocked the breath from her lungs. "Jessica!" Lila's voice cut through the shock. "I didn't want to believe it, but this is your daughter too." "What?" The word dropped like a stone between them, heavy and impossible. Giant shockwaves rippled through the crowd, every voice a murmur of confusion. There were whispers of scandal, of disbelief, the air thick with tension. The pieces Jessica had avoided for years were colliding, exploding into her reality. Michael's eyes snapped to Jessica's in an instant, but there was no softness, no warmth, just icy clarity. Nothing else mattered in that moment but the truth echoing between them. "Jessica, you have to listen. This isn't what it seems," he implored. But now the urgency on his face was laced with horror, as if he realized just what had unraveled. Suddenly, the lights blinked off completely, engulfing them in darkness. Panic surged as voices rose. Chaos erupted. Jessica felt Lila's hand slip away, something cold rushing over her, pulling her deeper into the unknown. Then came the sound, a loud crash, a gasp. Everything pivoted. But when her vision cleared, Jessica realized she was no longer facing the child from the floor. Instead, she stood before the truth, threatening to dismantle her entire world. Michael, the stranger who was once her husband, his face locked in terror, hands raised in surrender. "Jessica," he shouted into the chaos, "I can explain everything." But could this be explained? What had just collapsed around them was a foundation built on half-truths, woven lives, and lost possibilities. As she stared at his face, doubt coursed through her veins, thick and pulsing. What more lay hidden in the shadows? Would the secrets of the past cast them deeper into darkness? Or could they ignite a rebirth of something she never knew she lost? And amid the chaos, the storm raged on. The room buzzed with panic, fear pulsing like a living thing. Jessica locked eyes with Michael. His expression twisted between horror and desperation, as if the truth had just dawned on him in the most painful way. "Jessica!" he shouted again, a raw edge creeping into his voice. "You have to believe me!" But she couldn't hear him. Not over the chaos echoing around them. Leela gripped her arm tightly as bodies pushed and pulled in frantic motion. The image of the child who wasn't Mia, seared into her mind. "Jess," Leela shook her. "Focus!" Just then, a figure burst through the crowded room, barreling toward them. It was a doctor, someone Jessica didn't recognize at first, panting as they caught sight of her. "Jessica Powell?" he shouted, above the din, urgency bleeding from his words. She nodded, panic clawing at her throat. "What's happening?" "This is important. We need to move. Your daughter's—" He hesitated, taking a deep breath. "Your daughter's been in an accident." All breath left her body. "Mia!" Lila gasped. "Where is she? What happened?" "Please, you need to come with me." The doctor glanced back over his shoulder, spotting Michael. Now, without thinking, Jessica took off after him, heart pounding against her ribs. Lila gasped and ran behind. Then, another loud crash split the air. The lights dimmed again, flickering unpredictably. The audience of anxious families and rushing nurses shifted. Just as quickly, an alarm blared overhead, drowning out everything else. "Emergency alert! All personnel! Code red!" The doctor pressed forward, urgency stitched into every step. Jessica's mind raced. "What about Mia? Follow me!" he shouted, voice strained with panic. They turned a corner, and the hallway opened into chaos. Medical staff were scrambling, faces tight with fear. Jessica's heart raced, nerves firing as adrenaline coursed through her veins. "What happened to my daughter?" The doctor didn't respond. Instead, he led them into a small room where medical equipment flashed and whirred. But it wasn't the equipment that threw her off. It was a figure in scrubs standing there, face concealed by a mask. The air thickened with an electric tension. Then the figure turned. The mask came off, revealing a familiar face. Jessica's breath hitched. It was her sister, Anna. The sister who had disappeared years ago without a trace. "What are you doing here?" Jessica managed, trembling. "You've been gone for years. Why are you—" "I'll explain everything," Anna interrupted, her voice steady but urgent. Just listen." But before she could say more, another crash resounded through the hospital. A window shattered somewhere nearby. It sent shards of glass cascading like shooting stars. The lights flickered again, the beeping machines throwing wild shadows onto the walls. "What's going on?" Lila cried, eyes darting around. "Security issues. We need to get everyone safe," Anna said. "Jessica, Mia is in danger." "Danger?" Jessica repeated, disbelief twisting into her gut like a knife. "How could she be in danger?" "Everything has been a lie," Anna shouted back, emotion breaking through her voice. "We didn't just lose touch. We were hiding from them." "Who?" Just then, a figure loomed in the doorway behind them. A tall man, power radiating from him. He wore a grim expression, eyes locked onto Anna. "You shouldn't have come back," he growled. Jessica's heart raced. Anna's breath caught in her throat. "You know everything, don't you?" she whispered, staring at the stranger. And suddenly, like a match struck in the dark, the truth exploded, illuminating everything as shockwaves rippled through the room. "You don't understand," he snarled back, voice dripping with disdain. "They've been watching this whole time." The storm inside Jessica surged. Secrets, betrayal, family ties. And the life she thought she had swirled around her, What do you mean? She stammered, her world crumbling beneath her. Your daughter isn't just another child in this mess, Jessica. She's a key to something much larger than you know. The gravity of his words crashed down. Everything pivoted. What had started as a simple hospital visit was now a battle for safety. A race against a reality stitched with secrets. They needed to escape. But before she could take a step, the lights dimmed one last time, and darkness enveloped them. A cacophony of screams erupted as they were thrust into an uncertain fate, tangled in a web of outside forces and hard truths. Would the very thing they protected shatter them instead? And who could they trust when the very foundation of their lives was one big lie? As shadows danced, Jessica's mind raced, and she knew one thing: nothing would ever be the same again. The lights flickered again, plunging them into darkness, and chaos erupted like a pack of wild animals. Jessica's heart raced as she clutched Anna's arm, panic rising. She could hear the faint, frantic whispers of the crowd, blending into a cacophony of fear. "Where's Mia?" Jessica shouted, her voice cracking. The man in the doorway, threatening and ominous, loomed closer. Suddenly, a loud crash came from behind, rattling the walls like thunder. The emergency lights came back on, casting a harsh glow across the room. Jessica turned just in time to see a group of men in dark suits burst through the door, faces stony, eyes scanning the crowd. "Get down," one of them shouted, raising his hand as if it could control the storm of panic. And then it happened. The man, the one who had confronted Anna earlier, lunged forward, eyes wild. "You can't take her," he spat, pain and fury intertwining his voice. But before anyone could react, he turned sharply, grabbed the closest nurse, and aimed toward the exit. "Stop!" Michael roared, rushing forward. Jessica's heart sank. This isn't what it looks like. "Let her go." But as they struggled, Jessica felt something shift inside her. A primal instinct, one she hadn't recognized in years. The terror of losing Mia ignited a fire within. "Stop!" she yelled again, louder this time. The room stilled, if only for a breath. But it wasn't the fear in Jessica's voice that brought everyone's attention back. It was the piercing wail of an infant. The unmistakable sound of Mia. And just like that, the atmosphere shifted. The man holding the nurse backed away slightly, the cry cutting through his anger. "You're all fools!" he shouted, voice laced with desperation. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." Jessica's breath hitched. "What do you mean? Who are you?" A sudden hush fell over the crowd, confusion etched on every face. The man looked directly at her, eyes dark and swirling. "Your family is deeper in this than you think." Then, without warning, the lights flickered again. This time, a deep, vibrant red, bathing the room in an eerie glow. A sudden thud echoed in the distance, sending chills racing down her spine. "Code Red," blared from the emergency system, amplifying the panic. Realization crashed over Jessica like a tidal wave. Not only was Mia in danger, but something much darker lay beneath the surface of their lives. As the panic escalated, she steadied her breathing, gripping Anna's arm tighter. Before she could process it all, the man spoke again, voice a low growl. "You think you're the victim? You're just like the rest. Your DNA, your daughters." He hesitated, the words choking on something heavier. "It's what they want." The room erupted. Gasps filled the air. Jessica's mind raced, piecing together fragments of her past that she had kept buried. "What are you talking about?" And then, in a stark moment, he raised his hand, revealing a small device that gleamed ominously in his grip. "Do you want to know what they're planning?" he challenged, voice dropping to a murmur. "Your family isn't a coincidence, Jessica. It's a legacy." "A legacy?" Jessica felt the ground shift beneath her. The questions cluttered her thoughts, suffocating her. Was her life, her connection to Mia, tied to something nefarious? The world fell silent as the implication hung thick in the air. "Jessica." Michael stepped forward again, looking at her with a mixture of urgency and panic. "We have to get out of here. Now." The room trembled with tension, every whisper igniting the urgency. Jessica's heart thundered in her chest. But before she could decide her next move, the man activated the device, and an electric tremor pulsed through the building. The walls shuddered as alarms blared, commands crackling over the intercom. "All units prepare for lockdown. Repeat, lockdown initiated." As the realization sank in, she felt a fear like no other, one that promised to tear apart everything she thought she knew. "Jessica." Anna's voice broke through the chaos. "We need to leave. He's dangerous." But could they escape? This was no longer just about rescuing Mia. It was about facing a dark truth they had all tried to outrun. A truth that threatened to engulf them whole. What was the legacy that bound them? As the shadows closed in, Jessica fought to steady herself, resolve hardening. She couldn't go back now. They were all in this together, and she had to know. Whatever lay ahead, she had to confront it. The storm outside raged on as a new, more dangerous one swept into their lives. And within the chaos, the question lingered, chilling her to the bone. Would they ever learn the truth? Or was this just the beginning of something far worse? The room buzzed with tension, each heartbeat against Jessica's chest, thumping like a war drum. The chaos swirled around them, bodies shifting, urgent whispers slicing through the air. Michael stepped closer, eyes wild with a mix of fear and desperation. "We need to get out of here." But before anyone could move, the lights flickered. In that moment, Jessica's heart raced, but an odd feeling crept through her. Unsettling yet familiar. It was her instinct to protect Mia. It stoked a fire in her chest. "Who are you?" Jessica demanded, taking a step forward. "What do you want with my daughter?" He opened his mouth, but the words were stolen by a sudden blast that vibrated through the walls. An explosion? No, it was deeper, shaking the very foundation beneath their feet. Everything turned chaotic again. "Get down!" Anna shouted, pulling Jessica close. The ceiling before she could react. The man's device erupted in a blinding flash, showering the room in an iridescent glow that left an afterimage burning in her vision. The man staggered backward, and the sudden commotion drew every eye in the room. In that split second, Jessica felt everything shift. Someone screamed, and a figure near the door fell to the ground. A low, crunching sound echoed painfully. The crowd gasped, turning away, some frantically shouting for help. "Michael!" Jessica shouted, terrified. But he vanished into the throng, lost in the chaos. She couldn't see him anymore, and panic bubbled up inside her. "Anna!" she cried, her voice breaking. But Anna was gone too, swept away like a leaf in a storm. In that split moment, the full weight of fear crashed down on her. The man with the device lay still, a faint glimmer of movement under the emergency lights. Jessica's heart raced. It felt wrong. He should have been scrambling, not shrouded in silence. Then, the room shifted again. "He's not just some stranger," a voice cut through the chaos. It was Leela. "Jessica, look closely." Jessica's pounding heart stuttered as she stepped forward, forcing herself to process the scene. Beneath the chaos, a drop of crimson seeped from the man's wrist, too noticeable against the stark white of his shirt. "What?" she muttered. Confusion entwined with fear. And then she saw it. The tattoo on his forearm. The intricate design she recognized all too well. "No, it can't be," she gasped, stepping back. "It can't." "Jessica," Lila pleaded, her eyes brimming with panic and something deeper, something like recognition. "It's not what you think." The truth clicked into place with gut-wrenching clarity. This man wasn't just a stranger. They were connected. One she never knew existed. Before she could process it, the lights flickered again, casting shadows that twisted and morphed. Then his eyes snapped open, gaze locking onto hers, filled with a familiarity that made her skin crawl. "I'm back," he croaked, voice raw. "And I need you to listen." But the fear and urgency mingled into confusion. What was he saying? She shook her head, backing away. "No, you can't be. He's your brother, Jessica," Lila shouted, voice rising above the din. "What?" The ground beneath her seemed to dissolve. Joy, anger, and disbelief clashed violently in her chest. She wanted to scream. This couldn't be happening. "I don't have a brother." But there he was, bloodied and bruised, the truth leaking out in the tension. He raised his hands slowly, exposing the tattoos mapping his skin. "You were always meant to know, but not like this." As the panic escalated around them, she felt the walls close in. Her family, her past, everything she believed was collapsing in on itself. "It can't be true," she whispered, disbelief threading through her voice. And just like that, the room exploded with new energy. Voices clamoring, shouts of confusion and pleas for help, drowning her thoughts. Jessica faltered. "What does this mean?" she gasped, searching Lila's eyes for answers. But the answer came not from Lila, not from the brother she didn't know. It came from the emergency system blaring. "All staff, prepare for evacuation." The world outside might change forever, but each step of her past had just shifted. The pieces of her life just scattered into 1,000 directions, and she was left standing at the center of it all, questioning everything. "Will we survive this?" she thought. Heart racing. As the alarms shrieked and shadows danced ominously, one question clung to her mind like a lifeline. What else had she been kept from knowing? The room hummed with tension, each heartbeat growing louder as Jessica's mind struggled to catch up. The reality of the moment crashed over her like a tidal wave. The man on the floor, her brother, was breathing heavily, the air thick with the weight of his existence that she never knew. "You have to believe me," he rasped. Desperation lining. "Get out!" someone shouted, but Jessica's feet felt glued to the floor, rooted in disbelief. Before she could process anything, the lights suddenly shut off. Darkness enveloped them, and panic surged again. Shouts echoed through the corridor, and the distant sound of running footsteps raced towards them. "Jessica!" Lila's frantic voice reappeared, cutting through the chaos. "We have to move!" Just as Lila reached for her, a loud bang reverberated through the darkness. Something heavy slammed against the door, splintering wood and sending shards flying as the door buckled under the impact. "What is happening?" Jessica's voice trembled, the knot of fear tightening in her chest. The door flew open, and a group of armed figures rushed in, faces obscured by helmets. "Everyone down! This is a secure area!" one shouted, aiming a weapon toward the crowd. Jessica froze, heart racing. Who are they? Suddenly, her brother erupted with adrenaline, pushing himself up from the floor. "Get away from her!" he roared, hands outstretched. The armed men turned, shock written across their faces. "Stand down!" the lead figure barked. "No one moves!" The tension in the room swelled, palpable and electric. Jessica felt bile rising as she looked from her brother to the strangers, confusion swarming in now and blending with fear. "What do you want?" It came out as a whisper, lost in the chaos. Then the lead figure pointed directly at her brother. "You know what we're here for. Hand him over, and nobody gets hurt." "Jessica, don't!" he gasped, eyes wide. The gravity of his words sank in like lead. They wanted him? Why? "What's going on?" Jessica pleaded, her voice barely rising above the panic. Before he could respond, the lead figure shouted, "Move, now!" One of the armed men lunged forward, grabbing her brother roughly. "No!" Jessica screamed, rushing forward. She stumbled, trying to break through the barrier of bodies, pushing through fear and disbelief. She had to help him. Then came the unexpected. Her brother turned and whispered urgently, "Kill switch," as the armed men restrained him. The words sent a shot of adrenaline coursing through her veins. What did that mean? Someone was in danger. As if on cue, a loud, piercing sound filled the air, the alarm systems blaring as red lights flashed wildly. The stark, frantic noise echoed right through her chest, urging her to act. Lila grabbed Jessica's arm, pulling her back. "We need to go, now!" But there was something in her eyes. Fear mingled with fury. "No!" Jessica shouted again. But the chaos swelled, people rushing past them. Once again, uncertainty washed over her. The urgency of escaping had turned into something darker. "What's the kill switch?" Jessica asked, her voice cracking under the strain of all that was unfolding. Her brother's eyes widened. "You don't understand. They want you too." At that moment, the world spiraled. The armed figures reacted, their expressions sharpening as they turned toward Jessica, a realization dawning in their eyes. "Secure her!" shouted one of the uniforms. Before she could register what had happened, figures flooded toward her. A heavy hand grabbed her shoulder, pulling her back. "Get off me!" she screamed. That's when it hit her, like a punch to the gut. Mia. The realization pierced through the chaos, igniting a spark of fear like she'd never known. They were after her daughter. And just when the panic reached its crescendo, a deafening explosion rocked the building. The walls shuddered violently, and all at once, everything changed. Jessica was thrown back against the wall, the air exploding from her lungs. Dust and debris filled the air, swirling like a storm. As she struggled to her feet, fear sharpened her thoughts. In midst of everything, through smoke and screams, Jessica caught a glimpse of her brother, lying on the floor. Fear and determination etched into his features. He looked up at Jessica, and she saw it clearly now, what had been concealed from her all along. "Jessica," he gasped, choking on the debris. "You're not just my sister. You're the key." The world clipped around her as realization hit. This was much bigger than her. She was a part of something monumental, something terrifying. "Everything is changing," he whispered, as the chaos continued to unfurl, leaving her mind spinning with new truths and a singular question. What had she been pulled into? And just as the room flooded with panic, she heard her brother's final words reverberating through the chaos. "You need to know the truth." But the truth? It could change everything. Would she be ready when the dust settled? Or was this only the beginning? The chaos morphed into a frantic blur, drowning out Jessica's thoughts. Her heartbeat thudded loudly in her ears as she tried to process her brother's words. "You're the key." The weight of that sentence hung thick in the air, suffocating her. "Mia!" she screamed again, the name tearing from her throat, urgent and raw. But in that moment of sheer despair, the ground shook beneath her, rattling the very ground of her understanding. Then, like a match struck in the night, everything exploded. There was another fierce crash, a different kind of sound entirely, one that reverberated in her bones. The door burst open, not just a small entryway anymore, but a gateway into a nightmare. A wild-eyed figure rushed in, smoke billowing in behind him, silhouetted against the backdrop of chaos. Jessica squinted through the swirling haze, recognition blooming, though fear tempered it. "Mom, look out!" the figure screamed. In the haze, the truth hit her like a freight train. It was Ben, Mia's father, but he looked different, wild-eyed and frantic, strands of his hair matted against sweat. Why was he here? "Get out, Jess! It's a setup!" He ran forward, his eyes darting between the armed men and the crumbling room. "They're after you. They want Mia." "What do you mean?" she gasped, adrenaline coursing through her veins. "This is impossible." But before he could elaborate, those armed figures shifted their focus, weapons pointed directly at Ben. "Stop! Hands up!" one shouted, advancing. "Ben, no!" Jessica cried, but it was too late. Ben turned, bolting for the exit. The lead officer didn't hesitate. A shot fired, deafening in the claustrophobic space. "Ben!" Jessica screamed, the word tearing from her lips. He staggered, darkness swallowing him as he fell to the ground, eyes wide in horrified disbelief. Shock rippled through the crowd like an electric current. The room fell into a gasping silence. One breath, a moment suspended in time. As despair flared across the faces surrounding her, the truth pierced Jessica's already shattered heart. Ben, Mia's father, shot before her eyes. "No, no, no!" The words were frantic as she pushed through crying people and horror-stricken expressions. Her mind raced. How had it come to this? Was this really the end? Leaping to Ben's side, she knelt, cradling his head in her arms, fingers trembling. "Ben, please, please don't leave me," she pleaded, tears streaming down her face, mixing with the chaos unraveling around them. But his gaze was distant, tethered to a world she couldn't reach. "Jessica, Mia," he gasped, blood pooling beneath him. "Protect her. You have to." The desperation in his voice ignited a fury within her. "No, you can't leave me like this." Suddenly, from behind, she felt a presence, heavy and consuming. Her brother, the stranger who claimed blood, knelt beside her. "You need to listen. They're coming for her!" But Jessica's world was spiraling out of control, blurring lines between past and present. "Why didn't you tell me? You knew! You knew everything!" "I didn't want this," he shouted back, desperation knotting his voice. "You think I wanted to find you here? After all this time?" Jessica's mind spun furiously, latticework of connections threatening to unravel. Turning back to Ben, she realized time was slipping away. "You?" But before she could finish, the reminder of his fading heartbeat pulsed through her. The sudden echo of heavy boots crashed in, amplifying her dread. The armed figures were advancing, hands steady on weapons, calm amidst this storm of chaos. Then came another shock. Across the threshold, the air crackled, bright with something sinister. "No!" one of the men shouted. "Don't do it!" A voice boomed from outside. And just like that, another eruption of sound followed. A series of loud blasts and another explosion rocked the hospital. Walls shook, debris flew, and the lights flickered wildly as Jessica held Ben tightly, heart racing. The scene transformed into utter chaos, sirens howling, smoke pouring through the edges. The man's warning echoed in her mind as she clutched Ben, desperate to keep him anchored. But just when she thought all was lost, there was a flash, an unexpected movement that shifted everything. Ben gasped, eyes suddenly wide with clarity. Jessica, You're not just a key. You're the target. And in that moment, amidst the chaos of death and fear, something shattered forever. The truth hung heavily, a weight that threatened to crush her. "What?" she breathed, wide-eyed. "Oh my God," her brother murmured, gaze drifting towards the emerging chaos. Dread enveloped her as the reality sank in. Ben wasn't just the father of her child. He held secrets she never knew, and she felt the walls closing tighter around her. As the explosion roared in the distance and the air thickened, Jessica realized this was only the beginning. Relationships formed on lies, foundations built on half-truths. How would they survive this? Mia, she thought, the fear clawing at her heart. Everything was unraveling, and somehow she felt the weight of something far more sinister lurking in the depths. When all ties fade and darkness creeps in, how do you fight when the very essence of who you are is called into question? Would she still be the protector, or become the ultimate threat herself? The chaos pulsed around Jessica like a living thing, constricting her chest and filling her throat with tension. Ben lay on the floor, blood oozing from the wound, and the panic in her heart constricted tighter. "No, stay with me. You've got to fight," her voice trembled. His feverish eyes flickered, struggling to stay focused on her. Then, like thunder rumbling, the building shook again. The lights flickered, casting jagged shadows. Jessica felt the world tilting, everything around her spinning wildly, as if the universe had been upended. "Mia!" she screamed again, desperation clawing at her chest. In that moment of torment, her brother leaned closer. Urgency etched into his features. "Jessica, we don't have time." Before she could respond, a deafening explosion rang out, drowning her out. The air was thick with smoke, swirling like a storm, and it felt like the walls were collapsing. The cries of confusion echoed, drowning everything else in utter chaos. "We need to move, now!" her brother shouted, grabbing her arm. His grip was fierce, igniting sparks of resolve in her spine. She wanted to argue, to insist on helping Ben, but the urgency in his voice propelled her forward. "Where's Mia?" she gasped, emotions flashing through her like lightning. "Go, Jessica! I'll find you." Ben's voice cracked, the pain echoing in her ears as they retreated into the corridor, shadows dancing around them. They dashed down the hall, each step heavy with fear. Lila was ahead, frantically waving them on. "This way! Hurry!" As they rounded a corner, Jessica's heart sank. Standing there in the flickering lights was a looming figure. Michael, his face twisted in sorrow and anger. "What are you doing? You can't get away!" "Michael, Mia is in danger!" she shouted back, breathless. But the coldness in his eyes cut deep. "Don't do this!" he shouted, desperation edging his tone. "You don't know the truth." His words hung in the air, thick and heavy. She could feel the tension crackling like electricity. "What truth? What are you hiding?" Just then a shriek tore through the chaos, shattering her thoughts. "Get down!" someone yelled as something exploded further down the hall. Jessica ducked, adrenaline pumping. In the confusion, she caught a glimpse of Anna, her sister. The sight of her sent a shudder down her spine. "Jessica!" Anna shouted, her face pale. "You need to see this." In that instant, just above the frantic cries, a flash of light caught Jessica's eyes. She turned. And in the midst of the chaos, her brother's form began to shift. "No!" Jessica gasped, shock gripping her heart. The shimmering surrounded him, blinding and surreal. Chaos faded into a strange, distorted silence. And then everything changed. Her brother's face transformed, shifting into someone completely different. Someone far more sinister. The air felt electric, as if charged beneath their feet. What? Jessica's voice trembled, confusion knotting her stomach. The figure now loomed taller, eyes dark and piercing. You think you understood? You're in deep, Jessica. Who are you? She spat, revulsion mixing with disbelief. Your brother was a decoy, a means to an end. The voice was chilling, echoing through the hollow corridors. Every nerve in her body frayed. You're part of something much greater, and now you're going to join the cause. Her heart dropped. She staggered backward, overwhelmed. No, this can't be real. But the weight of his words settled heavily over her. The truth she had clung to, everything she thought she knew, was it all a lie? The figure laughed, a cruel sound that sliced through the tension. You are the missing piece. Get away from her! Michael lunged forward, but it was like pushing against a wall. In a split second, the building shook violently again, and the lights flickered, plunging them back into darkness. Screams echoed wildly, and Jessica's heart raced as everything spun further out of control. Would this nightmare ever end? Or was the beginning of the truth only the start of an unimaginable descent into chaos? As the shadows danced, one haunting thought gripped her, a revelation that all she knew was now forever altered. What if she had always been wrong? The room was chaos. Jessica struggled to process her brother's words. A familiar figure hovered in the shadows, his intentions murky. You're the missing piece. She felt her heart pounding in her chest. Everything she thought she knew was crumbling. Get away from her! Michael shouted, stepping forward. But the ominous figure pushed him aside with an ease that made her stomach drop. Jessica felt panic clawing at her throat. She had to protect Mia. She had to know the truth. Mia is in danger, she yelled, casting a frantic glance around the debris-filled room. Just then, an enormous explosion rocked the hospital. Dust swirled in the air, stinging her eyes. For a heart-stopping moment, Jessica lost her balance, arms flailing as the walls seemed to close in. Time is running out, the figure warned, eyes flashing with intensity. You're part of something bigger, and if you don't act fast, it'll be the end of everything. In that moment, Jessica's brother shot forward, eyes huge with desperation. Jessica, listen, there's something you don't know. But before he could say more, the emergency alarms blared, echoing around them. Panic surged like a tidal wave, pressure building, suffocating. We need to move, her brother insisted, urgency draping over every word. Mia! Jessica screamed, the name ripped from her throat. But as she attempted to rush past the looming figure, a strange sensation shook her. Everything blurred. Seconds stretched, her entire existence narrowing down to that single heartbeat. Then, suddenly, just as she reached the exit, a blinding flash erupted. Jessica stumbled back, hands covering her eyes. When she blinked away the spots, she realized the man was gone. In his place stood someone else, another man, different in every way, but with eyes she recognized. Dad, she whispered, legs shaking beneath her. The figure grinned, a reflection of a memory she had buried deep. It's been a long time, hasn't it? Bile rose in her throat. What are you doing here? You left. Not by choice, he said, his voice calm, but pain flickered in his gaze. You need to understand. I'm here to save you, to save Mia. It's all connected. Connected to what? She shouted, disbelief fraying her nerves. He took a deep breath, and the air grew thick with tension. Jessica, the truth is bigger than you know. Mia, she's part of a legacy, a family legacy meant to protect something powerful. What? Shock rippled through her. What are you talking about? Your mother wasn't just a photographer. She was part of the agency, People tasked with guarding the most dangerous secrets. Secrets the world isn't ready for. Everything she thought she knew about her life cascaded into fragments. Her upbringing, the whispers of her past, the secrets buried like treasures. Those people, she pointed back toward the hall. They're hunting you because of us? Yes, and now they want Mia. You have to protect her. Jessica, you have to trust me. But just as hope flickered in her heart, everything shifted again. In the distance, the floor began to tremble, dust raining down from above. And then, an ear-shattering crash. The ceiling caved in, debris tumbling like a wave crashing against the shore. People screamed. The sound pierced her ears. "Run!" he shouted, pulling her back as the chaos erupted around them. Voices wove into a hum of desperation, cries of fear echoing in the air. And as they rushed toward the exit, Jessica felt a sudden pain in her chest, like glass slicing through her. She looked down, realizing with horror that blood soaked her shirt. "Dad!" she cried, eyes wide. But before she could process, the world around them fractured even further. "No," came a voice from behind. Michael, caught in the rubble, his pained gaze locked onto Jessica. "Don't go. You have to stay." Time froze. Her heart raced. As she reached back toward Michael, the shadows closed in completely. She was torn between a future she didn't understand and a past she was desperate to escape. "What do I do?" she thought, panic flooding her mind as the screams faded into nothingness. In the deafening silence of her own racing heart, she knew there was no turning back. Would she let fate decide for her, or would she take control, risking everything for the people she loved? As she hesitated, a deafening crash echoed behind her. Everything she'd fought for was hanging by a thread. The storm was not just outside anymore, it raged within her heart. And before she could answer the question, lingering in her mind, the dust settled, and darkness engulfed her entirely. What was the truth? And could she fight for a future without knowing what it meant to be part of this deadly legacy?